Hello Internet, I'm Marley, and this is an attempt at a voiceover video that is long past due. Getting the obvious out of the way, I have never made a voiceover video, my experience in writing and recording my own scripts are non-existent, and I have a very low understanding of the English language, despite it being the only language I know. But regardless, I am eager to try something I will forever be embarrassed about, so without further ado, let's talk about my experience in this year's artfight event, which wrapped up in August. For those of you who don't know what artfight is, I will do my best to try and summarize, though I highly recommend checking out artfight's official webpage, as they do a much better job explaining things. Link in the description. But as a loose summary, Artfight is an annual art game that takes place every July, where participants are split into two teams and are thrown against one another in a point-based competition to achieve a higher score by the month's end. To get points, you have to draw other people's characters, which in this instance is called attacking. Now, there are a handful of factors that help determine how many points an attack is worth, but we'll get into that a little bit later. For my first attack, I had no idea what I wanted to draw. All I knew is that I wanted to start with something simple, cute, and preferably of a lesser difficulty. With this in mind, I sat refreshing the Artfight homepage until something caught my eye, and soon enough, my eye was caught. My dear viewers, I present to you Crow, who is in fact a crow, a goofy, silly, little undead crow with a giant pink feather on his head. And while I was excited to finally find a character I wanted to draw, I couldn't help but dread what I had gotten myself into. If you didn't know, I primarily draw humanoid characters, so this was not the easy start I had hoped for, but it was the cute start I was hoping for. Cute things are my kryptonite, so I made this an exception. And this would be one of many. Now, I would say that this was my calling to finally get better at drawing animals, where I would vigorously research and study the anatomical structure of birds, but my drawing process consisted of drawing random shapes until my brain said, yeah, that's close enough. So I guess you could say I was winging it. Ha! But one silly drawing later, it was time to submit. As I mentioned before, Artfight is a point-based game. Each attack you submit is worth a certain amount of points, which are calculated through a rating system, or guide that references things such as the artistic medium, size, and rendering of your work. This essentially serves to factor in the time and effort that went into your submission, so in theory, the more effort an artist puts into their work, the more points it's worth in the game. In my case, I'll be referencing the drawn/painted category as I solely stuck to digital illustration this year. And after going through the rating process, this little fellow tallied up to an even 20 points, not too shabby. All in all, I really had fun drawing Crow, and as much as I veer away from drawing animals, this definitely raised my ambition to draw them more often, especially if they're presented in adorable cartoony styles such as this. I also came to discover that the artist, Doodles, has an entire army of adorable creatures on their Artfight page, and believe me when I say I will be coming back for round 2 next year. For my second attack, my ambition had no bounds. You know why? Because this character targeted me on a very personal level. Firefly, the Fire Genasi Artificer. Visually, everything about her design, her color palette, her big glowing eyes, her long braided hair, the addition of being a D&D character, all of these factors landed critical hits on my favoritism checklist, and yes, I am biased. I am biased and I am proud. Not having a lot of information on Firefly, I wasn't sure about what direction I wanted to take this illustration in, but for whatever reason, I knew I wanted her arms to be a main focal point of the piece. From the moment I saw her design, I thought they were such a defining and interesting element of her character, both because she's an artificer, and from what I can only assume, a complete badass. Then came to the process of line art, which for some reason felt like an eternity of work. And not even because of how much I had to draw, rather, it was how little I had to draw. To explain, I consider myself to have a very line-driven art style, which I love, but sometimes I can get a bit carried away with details. And for this piece, I challenged myself to consciously minimize the amount of lines I used. In my mind, this would help me for future projects as I hope to study and create storyboard animations in the upcoming years. So for a lot of this drawing process, I was constantly backtracking to erase all of the extra details I kept adding, a force of habit that needed to be thwarted off with much persistence. And as much as it pained me at first, I got used to it by the end, and I am really happy with how it turned out. In fact, I consider it to be one of my all-time favorite illustrations I've made since I started getting into digital art over 5 years ago. And 14 hours of draw time later, it was time to submit. After going through the rating system, this piece came out to be worth 12 points. Yes, it was a friendly fire, which meant I had attacked someone on my own team, which I knew, which is allowed, but that meant that in the end, my submission's overall score was halved. Which, yes, this reveal did pain me a lot, but it was so worth it, because in the end, I got to draw such an amazing character. Maybe the points are the things we drew along the way, something like that. Moving on, I was relieved to be finished with Firefly's piece, but I was feeling pretty burned out. Fortunately for me, my artisan fire was reignited once again because this time someone attacked me, which meant it was time for revenge. Oh yeah, no need to find an opponent when the opponent finds you. I was still exhausted from my last attack, but I was pleasantly surprised to find that this artist had a bunch of cutesy characters lined up for me to pick, and after looking at all the characters, I settled for the closest humanoid I could find, for my own sake, which was an alien named Pear. Honestly, I really enjoyed creating this illustration. I just sat back, turned off my brain, and drew some more silly shapes with more silly eyes. Honestly, the fun that I had creating this piece served as a positive reminder that not everything I have to create has to top something I drew before. It could just be for fun, and it should just be for fun. And with that being said, I did in fact forget to draw Pear's mouth. I think I had too much fun. Feeling motivated, it was time to take on my next opponent, and it would be the toughest one yet. A man. Okay, let me clarify something. I can't tell you why, but I rarely draw guys. I've been doing digital art for over 5 years, and I still can count the number of guys I've drawn with my hands. Under 10. Is that sad? I want to say that's sad. But in my art fight spirit, I promised myself I'd at least try to draw a couple of guy characters, because practice makes perfect. To challenge my own stubbornness, I decided to draw some of the characters from the artists I follow on Kara. So, for my 4th illustration, I took on Photo's character, Linus, the half-elf adventurer. And to make my life easier, I also decided to include their other character, Flue, a shape-shifting dragon, because obviously I draw animals all the time, and they're no issue at all. And why did I do this to myself? The process itself wasn't too difficult. I will say that I definitely missed the mark on Linus's face. He's rocking that 1,000-yard stare, if you know what I mean. But hey, I drew 2 things I don't normally draw, so overall, I call this one a success. Once again feeling drained, I decided to keep my serious to silly pattern going. So I pulled a character from my bookmarked list, the funky, the fabulous Murple. And I'll be honest, I think I managed to draw this guy in like 2 minutes, so there's not much to say about this. Process-wise, between you and me, I thought Tetris, so I drew Tetris. And I used my character Gwess as one of the blocks because why not? And with that, we sprinkle 6 points into the pot. I need to stop doing so many friendly fires. With with only about a week left on the art fight clock, I knew it was time to get serious, which meant attacking someone from the opposite team. So like, playing the game as it was intended to be played. And you know what? I found the perfect character. A D&D character. And better yet, a tiefling character. You know me, I love tieflings. I have my beautiful girl Cynthia, and I would like to draw more horns and pointy ears, thank you. Still, embarking on the I never draw this, but I should campaign, I tried experimenting with chibi proportions. And you know what? I really enjoyed it, and I think it worked really well with this character's design. Inspiration-wise, we had plenty to work with. I saw pyrotechnic, so of course we added fire. I saw lots of daggers, 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 so I had to include those. And it isn't a D&D character without a bunch of belts everywhere, so bing bang boom, we completed this piece.